Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. Now, cash-strapped state-owned national carrier Air Namibia has been placed under voluntary liquidation. The announcement by Finance Minister Ipumbu Shiimi followed a cabinet decision to stop bailing out the airliner. The minister told the media that Air Namibia has never made a profit since its inception. And after injecting $554 million in the last 10 years, the government felt enough was enough. 600 employees are expected to lose their jobs, and government has offered them the value of 1 year's salary over the next 12 months. To try and understand what led to this downfall, we're now joined via Zoom by Aviation Analyst Desmond Latham, who's with Frey Intermedia. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, Desmond. Always good talking to you.
Peter, thanks for having me back.
All right, so this story of Air Namibia sounds very much like South African Airways.
Yes, it is. It's 100% government-owned and run in Namibia. It was taken over by the Namibian government in 2013. And basically, as you said in your interim and your introduction, it hasn't made a profit since. The problem with government-run airlines is that they don't make profits for a number of reasons. Government-owned airlines do, such as the Ethiopian Airlines, although at the moment, it's like everyone else is suffering because of COVID. So there's been a number of missteps made, and it's been in financial difficulty. In fact, it was taken to court last year, or was about to be taken to court in the EU sector by a company that it owed 8 million euros to, and had formed an agreement to pay that back. So it not only was in the hole for the 450 million US dollars, but also for this amount in Europe. So you can see that there's been missteps taken at that airline.
All right, so the union's crying foul, saying that it's mismanagement, but I guess that's only part of the story.
Yes, I mean, if you look at how they've been managed, they tried to do the right things, which is lease Airbuses at the more economically viable Airbuses, and also increase routes. But of course, you know, you're looking at a country of 2 million odd people, and running an airline in a country that's small with running an Airbus or two is a bit of an overkill in a strange way. Because I mean, you're looking even at tourism, which drives a lot of the sector and earnings in Namibia. It just wasn't enough, and of course, over time, the competitors were starting to chew away at the corners. We had Comair, Kalula, for example, flying into Windhoek. And of course, recently we've had Airlink, which has reached an agreement with the Namibian authorities to fly into Windhoek as well, and other airports in Namibia. So more live, smaller operators who run Embraers and maybe smaller aircraft that are more economical to run have been chewing away at the sides, if you like.
All right, and I guess in the end, COVID-19 has been a great leveler, hasn't it? I mean, I think more than 50 commercial airlines have ceased to operate or closed down or suspended their operations.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at a situation where you and I know we were brought up like this, to not be profligate and spendthrifts. You know, in other words, we keep some money in the side. And what's happened, I'm afraid to say, in state-owned companies, pretty much in Southern Africa, but particularly in South Africa, and also Namibia has suffered from this, is there's been a chewing away there of the treasury, if you like, that the funds that have been stored and the headroom that have been created by investments had been whittled away. And now, under crisis, the reality kind of has dawned on individuals. I mean, I looked at the numbers in Africa, for example, the 54 countries, and of that, there's only 3 countries that don't have airlines. I mean, it's Lesotho, Guinea, and Burundi. So you've got all the other countries have airlines, and they're all suffering. I mean, they all are being bailed out or in close to going bankrupt. And I'm talking about the biggest airlines here, such as Kenyan Airlines, which is also in financial difficulty at the moment. So COVID really, as you said, it's put everyone on the line. And this is the time, strangely enough, when people who do have a live and an understanding of how the future could work for aviation, this is when they have saved some cash, they're running sustainably, locally and domestically. And those are the airlines that are going to continue functioning and probably sign deals and do code-share arrangements with the larger airlines across Africa and further afield.
We've seen over the years in Europe, national airlines being sold off and privatized. Is this the way forward for Africa? Because we've proved time and time again that it is an expensive thing to do, especially if you don't really have the skills to do it.
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, if you want to take it to the next step, you've got to look at space travel, which is linked to aviation, of course. And space travel's now largely been driven by not the exploration, which is still nation state, but the actual travel side has been driven by companies. And that's going to be the future in aviation too, is that nation states will be in the second phase of post-colonialism. So the presidents won't have to fly in an airline with the flag on the tail and those kind of things that we've seen happen in post-colonial countries, and particularly in Africa. So you're going to see a situation develop where globalization will come to the fore once more. And there'll be an agreement that Africa is essentially a continent, and that you can fly a number of airlines that have agreements across the whole continent and further afield. So you can see what I'm saying here, that there's, when we fly airplanes, we think in thousands of kilometers. We don't think about the borders. We think about the continents and the oceans. So companies that think like that and operate like that will be tying us together in the future. And hopefully that in SADC region, we'll have airlines that understand that and allow us to travel back and forth in kind of corridors as we face this pandemic. So we can take our tests from here into DRC or Mauritius, and it's accepted as SADC, as the yellow fever is, which we have to have at the moment. So I see something like that in the future. We will need to travel fast and quickly and far, and taking a ship or taking a bus is just not going to cut it in these 1,000 kilometers. So there is a opportunity here.
All right. So is there anything that can be done to save Air Namibia, much like South African Airways is trying to build a new airline within the existing structure?
I think you must understand that to do that, they're going to have to explain to the workers, the pilots and everyone involved, that they have to stand back and be furloughed. In other words, they're not going to be paid money. They're going to be told to go away and come back at some future date. Another future date is the problem, as you mentioned, Peter. We have this pandemic. And if you did the risk analysis, which we've been doing in aviation for the last year, since March in 2020, is that it's not going to be over until next year. And the effect on aviation is going to be, in fact, some are saying it'll never get back to December 2019. But if it does, it would take up to 4 to 5 years, or up to 2024, 25 at least. So you're looking at a situation where the short answer is no, that these airlines will not continue functioning, because we're not in the short-term environment here. We're in a medium to long-term reaction to an existential crisis that is likely to kill a lot of people. So you can't play around, and aviation is sitting on top of that bomb. So we are going to see a situation develop. We know this from our research and our risk analysis and so on, that we're looking at least another 6 to 8 months of this kind of activity, and probably extending into next year. So how can you operate an airline when no one wants to travel to a country because it's too high risk, or that the countries don't agree on what kind of tests they'll accept, and vaccines are not freely available, we're told here, until next year for the majority of people living in South Africa. So you can see the situation developing across the world. Airlines that have played games with their funds, I say that in inverted commas obviously, are finished.
All right, a very sad end to yet another airline, and I suspect we're going to see a lot more stories like that during the course of the year. Desmond Latham, thanks so much indeed. Always good talking to you.
Thanks so much, Peter.
All right, that's aviation expert Desmond Latham talking to us about the situation in Namibia.